Win big in 2024 with Team Sync from RotoBaller. Import your fantasy teams and sync your leagues. Get customized tools and tailored advice for your specific rosters and scoring settings, including live recommendations from the live draft assistant, free agent finder, and lineup optimizer. Sync an unlimited amount of NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL fantasy teams from all of the major fantasy platforms. Get a discount for any premium pass using my promo code Knuckler. Just visit rotoballer.com/radio and start rotoballing like a boss. This podcast is also brought to you by Parlay Play Fantasy Sports. Use my referral code RotoBrady. Get that sweet, sweet deposit bonus. They've got free contests, paid contests coming to a state near you. Check it out. They're slashing lines and giving out bonuses all day. It's a fun platform. And what is up, everybody? This is Brady Grove bringing you another interlude episode of RotoBaller's official MMA podcast. Tap that with me tonight.
Inside the mighty Trigon, referee Curtis Thrasher calls off this contest with an official time of 1 minute 37 seconds of round number 3, declaring the winner by way of technical knockout in his BYB debut. El Gorilla, Robert Duran Jr.
This man is a 12-4 professional boxer, newly with BYB Bareknuckle, just made his debut back in May. Give it up for Robert Duran Jr. Robert, thank you so much for being here. How's it going, man?
Everything is great, man. Everything's going great. You know, I'm back in camp for August. How's everything?
So, just to your BYB debut, man, like that fight got a ton of love. I think that video on YouTube already has 95,000 views since it was posted.
Right.
And that was a very interesting style matchup because, you know, your whole career, you've been a, you know, traditional boxer, and your transition to BYB, you take on a guy that's got a lot of Muay Thai experience. And so what was that debut like? And how did that stylistic matchup play out?
I mean, the debut was great for me. You know, from my opponent, I already knew exactly what he was gonna do. You know, was get on that clinching game from the beginning. You know, that's new to me because all we do is box. We don't clinch at all, you know. So, but once I figured out the clinching and how to avoid that, you know, a little bit of that, from the second round on, it was my way.
Did it end up being that like the best way to avoid the clinch was to be the one like going in hard and aggressive, because you were having a lot of success with your straight punches, just like taking a couple of steps in.
Right, exactly. So coming in with the jab, throwing punches, you know, letting my hands go, that avoided, you know, me falling into the clinch with him because that's his style. You know, so that helped me tremendously.
And so, what were some things about taking on a guy with Muay Thai experience that like immediately jumped to your mind as being different than the previous combat sports experience that you have?
No, not too much, you know, other than I knew he was gonna be aggressive, but the aggression I knew it was gonna come from the inside game. So, you know, from the clinch. So that's what I tried to avoid the majority of the time. But you know, I'm glad it happened my first time because it showed me a lot and opened my eyes to the clinch, and I learned from that tremendously.
And it's a really impressive way to make your debut, you know, because what are the questions that an objective viewer would probably have about you before going into your BYB debut? It'd be, you know, how is this guy going to handle someone who comes from another discipline that is also
Right.
a way over to Bareknuckle? People know you can brawl. You know, they know that you can have a great technical brawl and that you can take it and you can dish it out. That's not the question. The question is, you know, in coming over from boxing, how do you handle someone like that?
Exactly. Man, listen, it's all in the preparation, it's all in the training. You know, once you get a concept of what your opponent is like and you prepare for it 100%, you can go in the gym because you can go in the ring and I'm a calm person, you know. I like to take my time and be patient and figure out things when I'm in the ring. So that's basically what I did,
And
especially with my opponent.
And so you mentioned like the preparation of it, because I know I've seen a previous interview of yours where you said that Bareknuckle is kind of something that you've been preparing to do for a while now. How do you
Right.
position and prepare in going from traditional boxing to bare, because one could argue that there might be just as many similarities between MMA or Muay Thai to bare knuckle as there are to boxing and bare knuckle. Sometimes it just depends on who the fighters are.
Right. It really does. It depends on who the fighter is, and what type of style and mentality you have when you go into the trigon, so it just depends on you. But my preparation going into this bare knuckle fight is like I've been telling myself all the time. Like I've been fighting my whole life, even in the streets. So it's kind of damn near the same. You know what I mean? But these street fights, you're not fighting professionals. You're just fighting guys with no technique, no nothing. So it's over in seconds.
And it's funny too because I've talked to a good number of bare knuckle fighters from BYB at this point, and there's always it's always a good percentage of people that say something similar to what you said, which is like I grew up fighting my whole life. I grew up street fighting, so like it felt so it's very interesting that the critics of bare knuckle might say like why even have bare knuckle when there's MMA and there's boxing? What is added?
Right.
Well, there's clearly some element added because there are people that are just better at bare knuckle than they are at the other disciplines. And there's
True.
it has to, part of the explanation has to come from just the way that they're used to fighting for their whole life.
Yeah, that's true. If anybody knows, before there was boxing with the gloves, before there was professional boxing with gloves, professional boxing was with no gloves. It was straight bare knuckle. And then after, down the line, it transitioned to putting gloves on. So, boxing with the gloves now evolved from bare knuckle.
And it's crazy, like, because people forget too that boxing is a sport like closer to 200 years old than 100 years old.
Completely.
I
Yeah.
mean, you want to take the history, but I mean that goes back to ancient times. It's one of the
It
first.
goes way back.
Like just like running fast, jumping high, wrestling, fighting with just your hands is something is it's always one of the first things that people think to do. So there's like boxing, no matter because this is mostly an MMA podcast, but I love boxing too, and it's just interesting that like boxing is deep in the human psyche. Just the idea of fighting with your hands. Uh,
Right.
People always
Sorry
forget.
about that.
No, I hope everything's okay on that side. It went dark. There we go. But no, boxing is embedded deep in humanity.
My apologies. Can you repeat that again? I'm sorry.
Just that, like people forget like how long of a history the sport of boxing really has, and like it's really there's a part of it that's just embedded in humanity, and that's why it continues to survive even through the roughest times that it goes through.
I agree. I agree. But to answer your first question, man, I felt at home. I wasn't nervous. I felt home, like that's where I belong. You know what I mean? I love boxing, but I've been through my up and downs with boxing. A lot of things could have been better, but didn't. But I found a home with BYB, and I'm thankful for everybody there that gave me the shot. And I'm looking to keep going and progressing.
And I've only heard good things about people that have been working with BYB, and especially, I mean, you just take a look at your debut. I mean, it immediately brought so many eyes to you as a fighter, and so there's something really, and in their acquisition of BKB, now you're going to be throwing, all the European dudes into the mix potentially. It makes for a really deep talent pool. BYB's got a great heavyweight class, at least a lot of recognizable names. So it very much, even as simple as me being able to reach out to someone from BYB and say, hey, I want to talk to Robert Duran Jr. and it gets set up, like that's
Right, right, yeah, exactly.
what I'm saying? Like that's a professional level that a lot of organizations, that have maybe even been around for longer should strive to.
Yeah, man, it's crazy because I came to BYB at a time where BYB is gonna start, really taking off, start really flourishing. And it just so happened that BYB acquired BKB, all in the same week or same week. So it's just something really amazing, and I'm really looking forward to, to what with my career and what everything holds with BYB.
And so I know that you said before, like, it doesn't seem like you're done with boxing. Like, that seems like that'd be very early for you to ever say like you were done with it, so early in Bareknuckle. And you never know these days what opportunities will open up, like,
Right, exactly.
I mean, you were on the Fury and Ngannou undercard. Like you have seen firsthand like what those events can be. Like just if there's demand from the fans. So, but just to go like a little bit back, looking backward at your boxing career, um, you've spoken on the like politics that kind of started to like kind of slowly turn you off of boxing, and so is that something that has also made the transition to bare knuckle easier, where it's like it's a little bit more simple, where if you want to fight and people want to see you fight, you're going to get to fight?
Yeah, it just just a couple of points. It has to deal with a couple of points. In my 16 professional fights, it's been a roller coaster ride with me. Especially with the politics. On top of that, being a junior of a famous father, the critics are always hammering hard, on you, you know, and then with me. I don't know if it's because my father wasn't around or in my career, I didn't get the opportunities that I would have wished I would have got. You understand what I'm saying? And then on top of that, that I'm doing everything by myself. So people try to take advantage, promoters, matchmakers. Instead of helping me build my career, they want to use me to build somebody else's,
Ah,
record because of my name.
okay.
So it gets stressful, it gets difficult, and it's been like that. That's why I say a roller coaster because it goes up and down, and transitioning to BYB, there is none of that. That's why I can just leave boxing for a little bit because that's where my father made his legacy, and I can just make my own legacy with BYB.
And it so I think you put that like as perfectly as I could have hoped for an explanation, because like there's two dudes in, like high level boxing right now, high level boxing, that are the sons of legendary fighters that I can like think of right off the top of my head, that I think that like they just became okay at some point, with the situation that you described. And this is the great thing, man. And like this is the last we'll discuss anything of of who your dad is or anything like that. But it must be refreshing too to go to BYB, and it's like people know who your dad is, but they don't necessarily care for the purposes of BYB. In boxing, it must have just felt impossible to escape.
Yeah, because when they see a junior from doesn't matter what legendary fighter, they damn near expect you to be identical to your father. You know what I mean? Same fighting style, same power, same speed, same everything. And people are just judging from the outside looking in. You know what I mean? And not really seeing what it really is. So me taking a break from boxing right now has been like a big fresh, big breath of fresh air. Like you said, in BYB, no people know who my dad is, but they don't care. They just want to see a fight. They just want to see me fight. Win, lose, or draw, the embrace and the welcome and everything is there.
And like maybe there's a point. I mean, you're 35 years old. You have a handful of of good years in front of you. And so if there's a time to win a bare knuckle belt, or just see how far you go in BYB, now is definitely the time. And
Right.
if it ever comes to the situation where they offer you a bag of some sort to fight Anderson Silva in some sort of exhibition match, like that's a decision for you for another time. But for now, BYB seems like the right place.
Oh, most definitely. Like I said, BYB is home. I've never felt at home, in my professional combat career. And BYB definitely is home. I'm really happy and I'm thankful to Meg, to Greg, to Mike, and Mel, all three of them.
And so, like right now, is your training exclusively just geared towards boxing and bare knuckle, or is this something where like you start to diversify and start to like train a little bit so that you can incorporate the clinch if you want to?
Oh yeah, yeah. I diversify my entire training regimen. Where I throw in the clinching and work on that, get better on that. I've been doing a lot with my hands, strength and training my hands, my fists, my knuckles, making them harder. But nothing really out of the ordinary that I wouldn't do. With my boxing training, a lot of strength conditioning, making sure that my gas tank doesn't run out. Because gas tank is key in the trigon. Your endurance, your stamina, that's key in there.
And that's like I'm glad you mentioned the Trigon too, because like it's such a crazy thing for everybody from BYB that I talk to. Like no matter what, you can make the Trigon work for you, no matter what your style is. If you're a more aesthetically pleasing boxer and you have excellent footwork, you can make the Trigon work for you.
Most definitely, most definitely.
If you're a crazy Russian, throw your heat and try to do damage as quick as possible, then the Trigon's perfect for you too. Like it's all about like whose will is being imposed that night, because the style that is like, the person who gets the first foot off is, the person who's immediately at the advantage.
Yeah, I can say that. I mean, look at my opponent, my debut. He, as soon as that bell rung, he was already on me. And then the tables turned, and then I had to put him out. He was a good guy, very respectful, but I had to put him out in that third in that third round. I had to eliminate that clinching.
Well, it was really fun to watch in that third round, where it was like that straight punch that you were was just landing on the money, and it happened like three in a row, where bing and then down, bing down. It was like it all just came together so perfectly, and it was like it was clear that you had really zoned in and found your comfort spot there.
Most definitely. Like I told you, that first round, it was like me getting to know the trigon, getting the feel for it, getting to feel for the clinching, because at that moment when I was in that clinch, I was able still I was still able to think a little bit. Like, okay, he's got me in a clinch, he's shooting punches. I'll defend with this hand. Let me shoot punches upwards, towards him because he only has one free hand. So then the second round, it's like I processed all of that, and in that second round, I didn't allow the clinching to happen as much as the first one, and that's when I started letting my hands go, and he couldn't figure out nothing with that.
And here's another thing too that I'm always interested in is this BYB event that you fought in was in Denver. And I know that they have them like all throughout the United States. I know that they've done them in Louisiana and Florida, which it seems like you'd be a popular fighter in that region. But how does a BYB crowd compare to some of the boxing crowds which I have to think has to be a high range? Like there's Ngannou Fury, which is a big event. I don't know. You look out into the crowd during boxing events, and sometimes before the main event, it's dead. So like,
Right, yeah.
what's it like fighting in front of the boxing crowds? And then what was it like fighting in front of that BYB audience?
Well, in the boxing crowd, it depends on the fighter. You know, it depends on the fighter. If you're the favorite fighter, if you're a upcoming prospect, really good fighter, you give the crowd a fight, they're gonna love it. You know, and then in BYB, the crowd, they just love the atmosphere. They just love watching two guys just slug it out, no gloves, in front of you. That they love every bit of it. So the boxing and the BYB crowd is completely different. I've gotten more love in the BYB crowd than my entire 16 professional fights. The crowds one fight when I fought in New Mexico. The crowd in New Mexico, they called it for me like a second home for me. They loved me there. But other than that, man, is BYB. The crowd there is phenomenal.
Dan, what was it? Why was it New Mexico that it ended up being like such a reaction?
Now, New Mexico is because is it's like a combat state. People that love their boxing, MMA. I'm pretty sure. Oh, and Bareknuckle, BKFC, they love it there. And a lot of those New Mexican people, they're really, really big fans of my father. So when it was when my fight was being advertised and promoted out there, a lot of the fans couldn't wait for me to go out there. And a lot of them follow me on social media as well. So when I was already there and fighting, the whole crowd it was like being at home. Yeah, the atmosphere there was insane.
Okay, no, that's interesting. Now I know New Mexico's got like a strong MMA presence. I just wouldn't have guessed that it was such a like a full bodied, like they love it all kind of thing.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, they love the combat sport there. They love it.
I mean, like their sports fans in general are crazy too. Because you look at like a New Mexico or New Mexico State basketball game too. Like those crowds are absolutely lit.
Yeah, they love the sports, man. Especially they love sports and especially the combat sports.
So right now, your last fight was just over a month ago. And so, but a lot of the year left. About I guess almost like a full half of the year left. What are you trying to do with the rest of 2024? Does it involve fighting? Multiple times.
Of
What?
course, yes, sir. Stay busy, win all my fights, hopefully to the Lord, keep training hard, win all my fights, and see what the future holds for me next year. You know, keep fighting and hopefully a title fight down the line.
And real quick, just because this is a question I don't even like usually pull out, but I'm interested. Like, who are your like favorite boxers to watch right now that are like currently active?
Oh man, Lomachenko is one of them. Lomachenko's one of them. I have to really sit there and think. Lomachenko, hmm, probably Benavidez, Canelo, Crawford. I like Earl Spence. Just a couple of those guys.
It's been like for everything that we can, because we could do a whole separate podcast of 2 hours talking about like all the issues that boxing has had for a while and the
Yeah,
issues
most yes,
that
sir.
they still have. But they're, at the very least, I think that they've done, there's been better activity, it seems like, from divisions where you're not necessarily used to it. And a lot of the divisions that you just mentioned, that lightweight, middleweight range, like it's had a great class of dudes at the top. And it's been, and at least they've made some of these fights happen, because when they were
Yeah, most definitely.
for all the for how long it took for like Crawford Spence to come together, and for boxing fans and everybody who's watching in on it, those fights just start to feel like all right, I'll believe it when I see it. So
Right, exactly.
they've made those happen. At least that's a good thing for the sport.
Yeah, with boxing, it had its time where the YouTube boxers just took over. And that really, I'm a real boxing fan. I'm a real, and there's a lot of people like me, don't really like that. I don't like that. Like YouTube boxing is like almost making fun of actual boxing. Like nobody wants to see that shit. I don't want to see that. That's a waste of time. You're taking away time and opportunity from actual fighters that could be getting that shot. Instead, those promoters are giving it to these YouTubers. You know what I mean?
Okay, when you said YouTube boxing at first, I thought you just meant like backyard street, but like almost like I know what you're
No,
saying.
when I
Like so like the influencers boxing and stuff.
yeah, the influencer YouTube fighters, right? The Jake Pauls and the other guys and those guys.
It's like, all right, I don't know what to say about stuff that like I guess people want to see. Like Mark Zuckerberg is preparing to box Elon Musk right now. Like it's just a weird thing where like people want to see this. And so there's so much money. And so like influencers now are like training to be boxers. It's a weird thing where it was like I, that was so far outside of what we ever could have imagined. And then it became a thing where it's like, all right, you're an influencer. The next step is boxer. That's where you make the real money. Like it just
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. It's just complete bullshit. You know. I don't mean to curse, but that's just what it is, man. It's just complete bullshit. It's a waste of time. I don't know who the fuck wants to see that shit. I definitely don't,
it,
for sure.
it's just wild because all other sports, the purpose is to like find out who the best team is and who the best in the world is, at a weight class, or at least you're trying to move your way up. Here, we just want to see who would win. between like Jake Paul and Dylan Dennis. Yeah, like it's weird too because you've got actual fighters participating in it. It speaks to the money that there is involved in it. That like it's worth it for somebody to go and take the money to fight Jake Paul. Sometimes maybe to take a dive. I don't know. Those are big productions. I don't think that like the outcomes are necessarily random. But it's just a weird state for the sport to be in, and it's like there's opportunities in it for people who want money. But you got to question how much longer this is going to go, or was this something that just those two Paul brothers brought in? Time will tell.
I don't know what that was. I hope that ends soon. It's looking like it did, but that needs to retire like tomorrow. Like yesterday needs to retire.
The other problem is too, I think it does inspire violence from people that should not be inciting violence. Like it's caused like a lot of influencers to like seek out to like I don't know, like get into altercations with people. It's like at that Jake Paul Nate Diaz press conference where that kid went up and was like talking shit to Nate Diaz.
Oh
Like
yeah, the little kid. Yeah, yeah, I remember.
it's like it was like there was like a teenager too during that who was like it was just like dude like this is real life. Like this guy like Nate Diaz will punch someone in the face for looking at him wrong. Like
That's what I'm saying. While Jake Paul is on that conference stage, making everything a joke, you know, you got Nate Diaz who was an actual fighter. He doesn't take none of that lightly. I mean, you could tell he's just there to make some money, but at the end of the day, you could also tell that he's not with all that other garbage that's going on.
it's kind of the difference between guys too, like in MMA, like Colby Covington and Kamara Usman, where it's like one dude is like that's him up on that stage, that's his authentic him, and when you're saying crazy stuff to him, it's like this is about to get very real. But there are other people that can just turn it on when it's on the stage, and they can just turn it right off and be like, hey man, it's all a show. But it's like it wasn't to me out there.
Exactly. I mean, look who's talking shit to you. You got Jake Paul talking shit to you, a non-fighter who just decided to want to be a fighter. Come on, you fought Nate Robinson your first fight. Nate Robinson, a basketball player. The dude is like 5'5". Are you kidding me? This is the things that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm talking about. And then all the other fighters were retired, already retired out of their prime MMA fighters.
Yeah, which if anything, too, like it does. You can't even really tell because I don't know what actually happened in those fights. I don't know if any of that stuff's actually real, and I don't think anybody really cares if it's real. It's the goal is the spectacle. But it's like it does show you the difference between like guys that are MMA fighters and wrestlers and boxers. At the very least, like it's not like Ben Askren looked good boxing. But it's a weird era we're in, and it has leaked its way into the other combat sports. There is, even though the social media guys haven't ended up being in the UFC or haven't ended up being in actual real big time boxing matches, the fighters are starting to become social media personalities in themselves, to try to promote themselves better. So there are elements of it leaking. The question is, after all this is said and done, like what's going to be left and what will be a thing of the past?
Yeah, man. We'll just have to sit back and wait and see.
It's fun
You
to
know,
talk about. It's fun to talk about and think about for what's down the line, because and MMA is a very young sport. It's only been around for 30 plus years, so it's
yeah.
that side. But anyway, Robert, thank you so much for being here tonight. This has been a
Thank you for
great
having me.
conversation. Folks, this guy just made his BYB debut back in May. Keep an eye out for what's coming for the rest of the year. Robert, if there is anybody you want to shout out or anything you want to say, the floor is yours.
I want to shout out BYB, Greg Gloom, Mel, Mike for giving me the opportunity. I want to shout out Brawlers Boxing Gym for sponsoring me, my family and friends, and all my fans out there that are still tuned in with me. Thank you guys. I appreciate you all. And thank you for having me on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for coming on. And folks, that is it for another interlude episode of RotoBallers official MMA podcast. Tap that. We got UFC Saudi Arabia coming up on Saturday. Tune in for my picks. Thanks for listening. Have yourselves a great week and peace.